Three girls entered an abandoned house at exactly 12:13 a.m., convinced that ghosts didn't exist. At sunrise, only one of them was found wandering through the woods, covered in dried blood, carrying an old grandfather clock key in her hand. She never spoke another word for the rest of her life. 23 years later, investigators finally uncovered the horrifying truth hidden beneath the ruins of that house. But by then, it was already too late. Most horror stories begin with a haunted house. This one begins with a warning. If you ever find yourself driving through the forgotten countryside of Black Ridge County, you'll eventually come across a narrow dirt road hidden behind towering pine trees. Locals avoid that road after sunset. Delivery drivers refuse to take it. Even wildlife seems to disappear before reaching its end.
Emma Carter was 19 years old. Fear had never controlled her life. She loved abandoned places, urban exploration, and proving people wrong. If there's a logical explanation, she always said, I'll find it. Her best friend, Olivia Brooks, was different. She believed in facts. She studied psychology and enjoyed explaining supernatural stories with science. Hallucinations, mass hysteria, sleep paralysis. Everything had a rational answer. Then there was Sophie Miller. Funny, fearless, impulsive. She never backed away from a challenge. Together, they had explored abandoned factories, forgotten hospitals, and underground tunnels. Nothing had ever frightened them. Until Black Ridge. One cold October evening, the three friends sat outside the local diner. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Inside, an elderly man quietly watched them from the corner booth. When he overheard them laughing about the haunted mansion, his smile disappeared. He slowly walked over. You girls should stop talking about that house. Emma smiled politely. We're just joking. The old man leaned closer. No, you aren't. His voice was barely above a whisper. I've seen what that place does. Olivia asked, You've actually been there? The old man nodded. When I was 17. His hands began shaking. There were 4 of us. We entered just after midnight. His eyes filled with fear. I was the only one who came back. Silence. The girls exchanged uncertain glances. The old man reached into his coat pocket. He placed an old brass key on the table. Dark stains covered its surface. This key was in my pocket when I woke up outside the woods. I don't know where it came from. I don't know what it unlocks. But every year, he swallowed hard. I hear someone knocking on my bedroom door at exactly 12:13. 3 knocks. Always 3. And every year, the knocking gets louder. At 11:47 p.m., the streets of Black Ridge Village were almost completely empty. The wind had died. The crickets had gone silent. Even the stray dogs that usually wandered the roads had disappeared. Emma parked her old Jeep beside the rusted entrance gate at the edge of the forest. Beyond the gate, a narrow dirt path twisted through rows of towering pine trees. At the very end of that path, barely visible beneath the moonlight, stood the mansion. For a long moment, none of the girls spoke. It looked far bigger than it had from the village. The broken windows resembled empty eyes staring directly at them. The roof sagged under the weight of time. Black vines crawled across the stone walls like veins covering dead skin. The house looked less like a building and more like something patiently waiting. Sophie forced a laugh. So, this is the famous haunted house. Emma grabbed a flashlight. Let's prove everyone wrong. Olivia looked at her phone. 11:58 p.m. No signal. Emma checked hers. Nothing. Sophie frowned. Mine too. That's weird. Emma shrugged. The entrance hall smelled of mold, dust, and rotting wood. Their flashlight beams revealed cracked marble floors. Ancient paintings hung crooked on the walls. A grand staircase stretched upward into darkness. Everything was coated in thick gray dust. Everything except the floor directly ahead. There, fresh footprints crossed the hallway. 3 sets. Olivia knelt. She ran her finger over one print. No dust. Emma stared. Someone's been here recently. Sophie looked around nervously. Or something. The 3 friends followed the footprints. They led into a massive living room. Broken furniture lay scattered everywhere. Books had rotted away. Curtains hung in torn strips. A grand piano rested against the far wall, covered in dust. Emma walked over. She gently pressed one key. No sound. Another key. Still nothing. Then the grandfather clock stood motionless, yet its pendulum continued to swing. Tick, tick, tick. The sound echoed through the mansion like the heartbeat of something alive. Emma slowly aimed her flashlight toward it. The beam flickered. For a split second, the clock disappeared into darkness. When the light stabilized, it was closer. None of them had seen it move. None of them had heard it move. Yet somehow, it had crossed nearly 10 feet. Olivia stepped backward. Tell me you saw that. Emma couldn't answer. Her eyes were fixed on the clock's face. Its cracked dial was covered in faded Roman numerals, and beneath the hands, engraved into the brass, were 3 chilling words. Time remembers all. Sophie swallowed hard. I don't like this. Emma forced herself to move closer. Maybe it's part of some old mechanism. She reached out, her fingers trembling. The moment she touched the wooden frame, bong! The clock chimed. Not once, not twice, 13 times. Each chime echoed through the mansion like a church bell ringing underground. With every chime, the air grew colder. The walls seemed darker, and the smell of damp earth filled the room. When the 13th chime faded, the pendulum stopped. Or lived there. The second-floor hallway stretched endlessly into darkness. Portraits lined both walls. Unlike the dusty paintings downstairs, these looked brand new. The eyes in every portrait seemed unnervingly lifelike. Emma shined her flashlight at one. It showed a wealthy family standing in front of the mansion. A man, a woman, and a little girl holding a teddy bear. The date beneath the painting read October 31, 1913. Olivia whispered, "That's over 100 years ago." Emma studied the little girl's face. Her heart skipped a beat. It's her! The girl we saw downstairs! Suddenly, a loud bang echoed behind them. They turned. Every portrait in the hallway had changed. The smiling family was gone. Now, each painting showed the same family, dead. The father hung from a rope. The mother knelt beside a pool of blood. The little girl stared directly out of the canvas. Her face was pale. Tears of blood streamed down her cheeks. Then, her lips moved, very slowly. She whispered just
Emma couldn't breathe. The creature climbing out of the blood-filled cauldron wasn't just similar to her. It was her. Every detail was identical.
The same brown hair, the same frightened green eyes, the same scar above her left eyebrow, even the same silver necklace hanging around her neck. The only difference? Its skin was deathly pale. Its smile stretched impossibly wide, and its eyes were completely black. The creature tilted its head and whispered in Emma's own voice, "I've been waiting for you." Emma stumbled backward. No, this isn't real." Olivia grabbed her arm. "Emma, don't look at it!" But it was too late. The creature slowly stepped out of the pauldron,
All speaking at once. "Don't leave us. It's too late. She's watching. The clock must never stop."
Emma felt icy fingers wrapped tightly around her ankle. They weren't just cold. They were impossibly cold. It felt like every drop of warmth was being drained from her body. She screamed and kicked with all her strength. For a brief second, the grip loosened. Olivia lunged forward, grabbed Emma's arms, and pulled with everything she had. Emma slid backward across the dusty wooden floor. As soon as she was free, something beneath the bed let out a low, guttural growl. The sound wasn't human. It was deeper. The hall of mirrors. They ran without stopping. Left, right, down another hallway, until they reached a room lined from floor to ceiling with enormous antique mirrors. Each mirror was different. Some were cracked. Some were stained black around the edges. Some reflected the room perfectly. Others did not. Emma looked into the nearest mirror. Her reflection smiled. She hadn't. Emma's heart stopped. She slowly stepped backward. Her reflection remained perfectly still, watching her. Then, it whispered, "You shouldn't have broken the rules." Emma couldn't hear the sound with her ears. The words appeared directly inside her mind. Olivia suddenly gasped, "My reflection." Emma turned. Olivia's reflection wasn't copying her movements. It was crying. Blood. The scream echoed through every hallway. It wasn't distant anymore. It was getting closer. Fast. Very fast. Emma, Olivia, and Sophie stood frozen inside the Hall of Mirrors, listening as frantic footsteps pounded across the old wooden floor. Bang. 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 Closer. Bang. 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 Closer still. Then, silence. Emma tightened her grip on the flashlight. No one breathed. No one moved. A slow creaking sound came from the doorway. The old wooden door opened by itself. Standing there was the little girl. The same child from the portraits. The same child Emma had seen in the vision. She still held her faded teddy bear. But this time, her face was clearly visible. She looked no older than 8. Her pale blue eyes were filled with tears. Unlike every ghost they had encountered so far, she didn't look angry. She looked terrified. She slowly raised her finger to her lips. Shh. The man stood perfectly still beneath the dim candlelight. His black suit looked spotless. Not a speck of dust touched him. His polished shoes reflected the flickering flames. He didn't look like a ghost. He didn't look like a monster. He looked normal. That was what made him terrifying. He smiled politely at the 3 girls, as though greeting guests at an elegant dinner party. "Please," he said in a calm, almost friendly voice. "There's no need to be afraid." Emma slowly stepped in front of Olivia and Sophie. "Who are you?" The man's smile deepened. "I've had many names over the centuries. The villagers called me a demon. The priest called me a curse. The desperate called me salvation." He paused, gently adjusting the black gloves on his hands. "But I prefer the Keeper of Time." The moment he spoke those words, every pocket watch hanging from the ceiling began ticking again. Not together. One after another. Like hundreds of Emma's voice trembled. "What about the mother and daughter from 1913? The Keeper's smile disappeared for the first time. "They tried to destroy the clock heart. They failed. The house consumed them. But their spirits refused to surrender. They have been fighting me ever since." Sophie looked confused. "If the little girl wants to help us, why does she keep scaring us?" The Keeper answered quietly. "Because she no longer remembers how to be human. Even the kindest soul becomes something else after a century trapped here." A terrifying discovery. Emma slowly looked around the basement. Hundreds of pocket watches hung above them. Each one had a small engraved name. She stepped closer to one. Her heart stopped. The watch read, Emma Carter. The stone floor exploded beneath their feet. A deafening crack tore through the basement as ancient slabs of rock collapsed into the darkness below. Emma barely had time to react. "Sophie!" She lunged forward and grabbed Sophie's wrist just as the ground gave way beneath her. Olivia threw herself onto Emma, wrapping both arms around her waist. For one terrifying moment, all three of them hung over a bottomless abyss. Below them, thousands of pale skeletal hands reached upward, their bony fingers clawing at the air. They weren't trying to drag the girls down. They were trying to escape. Their silent screams echoed inside the truth about the Keeper. Olivia suddenly understood. She looked at the Keeper. "You lied! The house doesn't belong to you!" The Keeper remained silent. Emma stepped forward. "You're not the master of this place. You're its prisoner." For the first time, fear appeared on the Keeper's face. Only for a second. Then it vanished. He laughed. "A prison can become a kingdom if you survive long enough." The first soul raised one chained arm. "You promised balance. You fed it greed." The Keeper shouted. "I gave it everything! I gave it centuries! I gave it thousands of souls!" The giant monster roared so loudly that the walls split apart. "No, you fed yourself." Emma finally understood. The Keeper hadn't been preserving the curse. He had been using it. Every soul trapped inside the mansion made him stronger. He wasn't serving time anymore. He had become addicted to its power. The last chance. The little girl's ghost suddenly appeared beside Emma. For the first time, she smiled. She placed the old teddy bear into Emma's hands. Emma looked down. Hidden inside the torn teddy bear, Emma stood frozen. Inside the glowing heart of the ancient machine, the little girl wasn't a ghost. She was alive, no older than 8. Her face was wet with tears as she pounded desperately against the glass-like barrier surrounding her. She cried, Mom, please don't leave me. Emma's breathing became uneven. This can't be real. The keeper slowly walked toward the clock heart. His polished shoes echoed across the cracked stone floor. You've spent the entire night believing you were walking through a haunted house. He smiled. But you weren't. You were walking through a moment. Olivia frowned. What are you talking about? The keeper gently touched the ancient gears. This house is trapped inside the final minute before midnight on October 31st, 1913. It has been repeating that same minute for more than a century. Emma looked again at the terrified little girl trapped inside the machine. So she's been reliving the same moment over and over? The keeper nodded. And every soul that enters this house becomes part of the loop. They never truly die. They never truly live. They simply repeat. The keeper's desperation disappeared. His voice echoed with rage. No! If the clock heart stops, I cease to exist! The shadows exploded from beneath his feet. Dozens of ghostly hands wrapped around his body. Instead of hurting him, they merged into him. His black suit dissolved into swirling darkness. His skin cracked apart like old porcelain. Beneath it, there was no flesh, only countless spinning clock gears. His arms stretched unnaturally long. His face split open. 2 glowing clock dials replaced his eyes. His mouth became a jagged crack stretching across his entire head. The keeper was gone. Standing before them now was the true monster that had fed on time for centuries. He roared. The sound shattered every remaining watch in the basement. The final chase. Emma clutched the silver key. Go! The 3 girls sprinted toward the clock heart. The monstrous keeper lunged after them. His elongated arms smashed through stone pillars. The ceiling began collapsing. Huge rocks crashed around them. The first soul stepped between the keeper and the girls. For the first time, the ancient guardian fought back. The 2 giants collided with a force that shook the entire mansion. Chains wrapped around the keeper's body. The keeper tore them apart. The first soul grabbed him again. The battle shook the basement like an earthquake. Emma reached the glowing chamber. A tiny silver keyhole waited beside the glass. She inserted the key. It fit perfectly. Her hand trembled. Olivia looked at her. Do it. Emma took one deep breath and slowly turned the key. Click. The chamber unlocked. The little girl looked up. For the first time in over 100 years, she smiled. But the moment the golden light exploded through the basement like a tidal wave, Emma threw her arms over her face. Olivia and Sophie were knocked backward as the ancient clock heart shattered into thousands of glowing fragments. For one brief moment, everything stopped. The wind, the dust, the screams, even the ticking. For the first time in over 300 years, there was complete silence inside the mansion. Time begins again. A single fragment of the broken clock heart floated into the air. Then another. Soon, hundreds of glowing pieces drifted around the chamber like fireflies. As they touched the walls, something incredible happened. The mansion began changing. The cracked stone repaired itself. The rotten wood became new again. Broken windows restored themselves. Burned paintings became whole. Dust disappeared. The girls watched in disbelief as the abandoned mansion transformed into the magnificent home it had once been. For a few seconds, they weren't standing in a haunted ruin anymore. They were standing in October 31, 1913.